So what I would like to do is go ahead and officially open the July 25, 2023 year of Littleton Conservation Commission Zoom meeting. So bringing that to order, what I'd like to do is to go ahead and start on the agenda with the approval of the minutes. Oh, sorry. Yep. I just started with the wrong one. So I'm thinking of the date. So today is actually August 8th. And 2023, and we're approving the minutes for July 25th, 2023. I was just staring at them at the moment. So we have 3 1/4 pages. Does anyone have any omissions or corrections to the minutes from July 25th? If we don't have any, what I'd like to do is to have someone make a motion to accept.
Move to accept the Littleton Conservation Commission minutes of July 25th, 2023.
Thank you, Chase. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
So Michael seconded. Okay. Andrew, would you do us the courtesy?
Certainly. So roll call vote. Kyle?
Kyle Maxwell, aye.
Sarah?
Sarah Seward, aye.
Michael?
Michael Livingston, aye.
Chase?
Chase Gerbig, aye.
Carl?
Al Melberg, aye.
And Ed, have you been appointed and sworn in by chance?
Not yet. As I understand, the 14th is when the selectmen are supposed to be meeting.
Okay,
Gotcha.
perfect.
And myself, aye, so it is unanimous.
Okay, thank you. So Ed, as a point of order, discussion, participate, just not voting until you get sworn in, okay?
Works for me.
Perfect, thank you. We're glad you're here. Okay, so does anyone have anything that they would like to add to administrative discussions? I would just like to add one item on my behalf for the sewer update. I want to make sure that everyone received that email from Nick Lawler today. Does anyone else have anything that they would like to add?
Just the folks from the Long Lake Neighborhood Association talking about the invasives. If we could do that first. We've got Anna and Rob here to talk
Okay,
to
so
that.
they're able to be on with us right now?
Yes.
Okay. Commission, good with that?
Yep.
Okay, great. So Anna and Rob, it's all yours.
All right. I'm promoting them now.
Okay. So Tim, just so you know, there is a lag.
Okay.
That does take a bit. So Anna and Rob, we're ready whenever you are.
All right, start my video. Hello. All right, so what I did was, I know there was a site walk by Amy, Rob, and Tim on the 3rd of August. So I took the notes that Amy wrote up, and I just listed the options for disposal that she mentioned, and so I'm just going to whip through those. And the first category is to relocate the piles to a permanent compost location. That was the one option, and one location was north of Frog Pond. That was eliminated because of wetlands and property lines. West of the field at corner of Lakeshore and Lake Drive. Concom commissioners, you were going to look at that site to see if you agree that it's a possible disposal location. However, there have been concerns by LNA members about this location because of the smell and possible attraction of insects so close to private property lines. And also, it may attract contributors from other locations to pile things there. So our preference ultimately, I think, is going to be to pile the, figure out how to dispose of them at the location where they are right now. Because if they're taken off site, Amy doesn't recommend it because live knotweed appears to be growing up into the piles, which makes them, taking them off site problematic. They could be mixed with sprouting material. And for other species, there might be fruits and berries. So we want to keep it on site if possible. Mike Bald, also his feedback, we got feedback from him that dried canes are okay to use as mulch on themselves or in roughly the same location. Don't use them as mulch elsewhere or truck them off. So the ideal thing is to keep them where they are. He said leaves and joints are not an issue once they dry out. You can literally just smash them up on site. But a piece of cane might be mixed in that might have a root collar that didn't completely dry out. So it could sprout, although they don't establish themselves very deeply. So you can pull them out if you keep close eye on it. Anyway, we did separate out the rhizomes we saw into a bucket. So those are what we saw as separate, but there might be something mixed in. So there's always a possibility. So if we leave them to dry overwinter on pallets, Amy would like to see if any of the cut material is sprouting next spring before deciding on other disposal options. So, and town-wide, apparently disposal occurs generally in the place where they are pulled, except for the easier bagged species like garlic mustard or black swallowwort. Another option in so we're looking at overwintering in place until 2024. And then once Amy is satisfied that the piles are dry and won't sprout or spread seeds, we could chip the more woody material like the canes in place. Or another option is burning the dried stalks, could be an option. But we need to understand the requirements involved for burning on town property and possible locations that that would be okay to do. Rob said Rick Finley is experienced with burning knotweed, so he could be contacted if we're going to consider that. And we're in the future going to probably limit the targeted pull. If we do it next year, limit the pull so we're not accumulating so much material. And we have, as of August 7th, we have bagged some of the materials that are not knotweed, that some of those are bagged and are going to be disposed of, and Ellen and A will take care of that expense. And at least we're going to have our meeting on August 16th, so hopefully that cost will be approved. And it's not much, so I'm pretty sure we can handle that. So that's the update on disposal options. I'm not sure if commissioners were able to go out and look at the town land, but since it's probably not.
Let's go ahead and start to let the commissioners ask questions based on that. And I just want to understand what I heard. So when we pulled them, we put it on pallets. Was there any type of barrier from the soil to the pallet so things couldn't come up through?
No, Mike Bald didn't recommend barriers. Okay. He just said that the lack of sunlight and the piling of the knotweed on top of it will prevent it growing up through. But it doesn't prevent, of course, the fresh material from growing up. But if it cooks in place, it will hopefully smother.
Okay, great. Russ, do you have a question?
Actually, I have a statement. I actually have seen the site, and I drove by just the other day, maybe within the last week, and I saw somebody putting materials into the Purple Town transfer bags right in front of the frog pond. So I was wondering if you could describe, when we're talking about disposal and burning or storing or the like, I was just kind of concerned as what was going into the town dump.
Well, actually, that was probably Rob, and
I see that Rob is on. Do you want him to address that?
Sure.
Rob, would you like to introduce yourself to the commission? We've got some new members here.
Yeah. So Rob Rounds, 25 Juniper Road, member of LLNA as well as a certified weed warrior. Tim, I think you may recall that approximately 2 months ago when you walked site with me for different reasons, not directly identifying a disposal site, but at that time you got back to me that Amy had been asked, and Amy said, look, if you're not ready to wait until the fall to determine a disposal site, you've got two choices: leave them on the pallets for now, or put them in the, bag them and send them to the transfer station. So that's exactly what I did. I'm not sure, Russ, when you went by, but I've since now taken 25 bags of material, and that material consisted of a lot of multiflora rose, some of the leaf and stems of knotweed, some bittersweet. There was no garlic mustard, a little bit of buckthorn. There could be an occasional honeysuckle, but I think the honeysuckle is in the pathway pallets near the beach, so I don't think that's been taken off as yet. Everything was bagged and taken away.
Okay.
So
great.
the majority that's left on site is knotweed.
Right. Okay.
Well,
Other commissioners have questions, please? Okay. So Anna, we recognize we've got a full agenda. So we're keeping this as an update, or are you looking for direction?
I think right now we're keeping it as an update because it seems that Amy wants to see what it's like next year as it overwinters, to see what the disposal options ultimately will be. So I think that it's just going to have to be an update for today.
Okay, great. Anna and Rob, thank you for being here. Any other commissioners have any questions? Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you for the update.
Right. Thank you.
Okay.
Thanks, Anna.
So let's jump back to administrative discussions. First is enforcement order 107 Mattawanakie Trail. Anyone here to speak to that, or is this just an update?
It doesn't appear that we have anybody here to speak to that.
Okay. So, and it was just as a discussion, as a point of order, we drove by there today, and we can give our just what we drove by and saw after our meeting today with Chase and Kyle. Anyone have any comments on that, or feedback for Tim or Amy?
Well, only comment for those who haven't been able to see it is it does appear that it's the slope is revegetating fairly effectively, which is good news. It's really difficult to tell there where the 100-foot buffer might start or end. So I think my 2 cents is let's get the grass grown there and then think about how well we know where that boundary is and if we need anything else at the toe of the slope. But right now we probably just want to let the grass grow in since it's going.
Okay. Kyle, any other comments?
Nope. Yeah, Chase said exactly that was my comment at the site. I was pretty impressed that the grass has grown so quickly. And I say status quo, let it be for now until this goes forward more.
So Kyle, things to pass along, make note of, is it sounds like we might need a survey of where that 100-foot is on that toe slope and looking at vegetation for that at the toe slope as well. Okay. Next is a request for a certificate of compliance and close out the enforcement order 15 Grimes Lane, Mass DEP 204-0940. Tim, do you have comments on that?
Yeah, I went out there last week. It's not stable yet. There's spots within the 100 that are close to the 50 that are still exposed.
Do you think that that's going to be vegetated by the next meeting, or you think it needs to be reseeded? What are your thoughts?
I'm going to go out there again next week to take a look. I'm not sure. But there's also there's one area that I think for sure it's the area that's just within the 100-foot. It's to the right of the driveway. It's very bare. It could probably be reseeded. The other 2 spots might just be waiting on them to fulfill.
So perhaps if you need another commissioner to go out with you or go out with Amy, because if it is the case that we need more vegetation, we need to get on that to get it off by the fall for vegetation. Okay, the next is request for certificate of compliance.
Sorry, Sarah, one more thing. You guys can vote to close out the enforcement order. it was from the removal of topsoil that was within the 50.
Wasn't vegetation part of that enforcement?
I think that was so, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that was only within the 50. I could be wrong. The spot that I thought wasn't ready was outside of the 50, but within the 100, pretty close to the 50.
I'd rather just keep that enforcement order active until we're satisfied here. We've got the I's dotted and T's crossed.
Okay.
Yeah, agreed. Just take care of it both at the same
Okay.
time.
Thank you. Next is request for certificate of compliance 7 Snow Drive, Mass DEP.
Sorry. Sorry about that, Sarah. We have Mark Sledger here. He's raising his hand, so I'm going to promote him to talk about 15 Grimes.
Thank you, Mark.
All right, Mark, the floor is yours.
Mark, if you could just introduce yourself to the new commissioners, that would be great.
Okay, yes, Mark Slager from Allen Engineering, here on behalf of the applicant for Lot 6A. I was out there last week or so and doing some survey work, and while I was there, the homeowner was actually spreading some new loam around some of the bare spots, and he's going to reseed them. So I would expect that to be restabilized probably within the next few weeks. So
That would be super. Okay. So in your experience, do you want us to put you off to the next hearing or the one past that?
I would say probably the one past that, just to play it safe. I don't think there's any sense of urgency on this.
Okay, so we'll have the commission office communicate with you all.
Okay,
Great, thank you. Anything else?
that's it for me.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thanks.
Next is continued request for certificate of compliance. 7 Snow Drive, Mass DEP 204-0971. Tim, thoughts on that?
Yep. So I went out and looked at that a couple weeks ago. We were just waiting on them to send in the paperwork and the filing fee. And that one is stable and it is good to go. It was just a septic.
Okay, and you have the fees paid. Great.
Yes.
Is there someone that would like to make a motion, please?
I'll make a motion that the commission issue a certificate of compliance for 7 Snow Drive, Mass DP file number 204-971.
Great, thank you, Andrew. Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Thank you, Chase.
All right. Roll call vote. Carl.
Carl Melberg, aye.
Kyle.
Kyle Maxfield, aye.
Chase.
Chase Gerbeck, aye.
Sarah.
Sarah Seward, aye.
Michael.
Michael Livingston, aye.
And myself, aye. It is unanimous.
Okay, next is continued request for certificate of compliance 27 Maplehurst, Mass DEP 204-0952.
Yep. So if you remember that one, we were just waiting on the grass to grow. We checked on it a couple months back. It still wasn't ready, but now it is ready. The grass is growing pretty good. So that one's good to go.
Okay, super. Here again, is there a commissioner who'd like to make a motion?
I'll make a motion that the commission issue a certificate of compliance for 27 Maplehurst Drive, Mass DEP file number 204-952.
Super, thank you, Andrew. Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Thank you, Chase.
All right. Roll call vote. Michael.
Michael Livingston, aye.
Sarah.
Sarah Seward, aye.
Chase.
Chase Gerbeck, aye.
Kyle.
Kyle Maxfield, aye.
Carl.
Carl Melberg, aye.
And myself, aye. It's unanimous.
Okay, next is 49 Mattawanakie tree removal discussion. So I believe Dave is here. Dave, anyone else here that you would like for us to move over? I know we've got a couple people.
Addie's here too.
Yeah, hi.
Just us.
Okay, great. So we were out on site today. Dave, we have some new commissioners, so I think it's always good to introduce yourself and just go through quickly your request, and then the commissioners can kind of give you some feedback and thoughts based on observations.
Okay, hi, Dave and Patty Barr, 49 Matawanaki Trail. We have 2 trees on our lot that have been identified as hazardous, so we're asking to be able to remove them. They're both oak trees. The larger one is one that we really have been trying to preserve. We brought in an arborist to tell us how to best do that as we're putting rebuilding a stone wall next and around it. And we were told that the tree was hazardous and it was not safe to leave there. And at the same time, they identified a second smaller tree that was also hazardous. We really would like to keep the tree, but given that's what they say, we really don't feel like it's, we'd hate to have something happen if we, have been told and we leave it in. So at this point, we're asking to be able to remove the tree, and for the large tree, we'd like to remove the stump also, so that we can put the wall, continue replacing the wall there. We don't feel like there's any danger at all of having any erosion going into the lake. We talked with the commissioners about replacement trees today when they were on site. And we've also submitted a narrative about this and the documentation about the hazardness of the trees. And we've also shown where we've been putting in new plantings in the last year and a half on in the lot.
Right. And so they were Russ and Chase and Kyle and myself and Tim were out there today. What I'd like to do is to open comments to people that were out on site. So we have 2 trees that are part of this discussion. One is we enter the lot on the right, which is part of the standing grove that did have holes. And the other is in the front of the house, a singular tree overlooking the lake. So I would defer to the commissioners that were out on site for comments to go forward. What I'd like to do is to talk separately about each tree. What I'd like to do is to talk about the one as we go into the lot on the right that is in the grove. So perhaps Kyle or Chase, Russ, happy to have your input if we can go from there.
So my read of the smaller tree that actually I turned around there, and let's say the one in the grove of trees, the smaller the oaks. I don't have a problem with that. I don't disagree with the assessment that it's struggling. Also don't think it's serving a unique ecological function there. I think we should talk about what the appropriate replacement is there. I know we're working on a tree policy, but we have consistently expected that living trees that are taken down are replaced at a higher than 1-to-1 ratio. Here, maybe we don't need to do that because there are trees, but otherwise, aside from the replacement ratio on that, I don't have a particular problem with that one coming down.
Okay, thank you, Kyle.
No, I agree. I think the one close to the property line is certainly worthy of being removed. And there's plenty of other tree cover in that existing area, so I don't find issue with that.
So as part of the first discussion, I think what you're hearing as an applicant is that we're okay with that tree. I concur with those findings on the right, and then come up with working going forward with what that replacement would look like and its location. The second tree of conversation is the one to the left as you're looking at the lake, which is down on the row of where the stone wall comes. Having that, I know there's some difference of opinion on that tree and the vitality of it as well. So I would defer to some of the commissioners on their thoughts on that. And I know other commissioners weren't there today, but certainly are familiar through the past hearings and other site walks of the trees that are on the site. Chase or Kyle?
Go for it, Chase.
Yeah, I mean, So the comments that I expressed to the applicants, I guess, if you will, on side of this, I see that tree serving an important function in the sense that it is providing shade over the water. It's got a large canopy. It hangs out over the water. I do think that is an interest of the commission in attempting to maintain as much as possible. In the interest of, furthermore, I guess I'm not super convinced, acknowledging that I'm not an arborist, that it didn't strike me as a hazard. And I understand that the applicant's arborist has reached that determination, but it didn't appear to me to be particularly unhealthy. And I would like to interrogate that idea a little bit to see if there's a way we can figure out if it really does, in fact, need to come down. If it does need to come down, my concerns are twofold. One, that the replacement location for the proposed replacement is essentially more cozied up with the copse of trees that already exist there, and in any shade function that tree that is being removed would anything the replacement tree would add is already part of that sort of group of trees that already exist. And furthermore, that replacement ratio issue. So my recommendation here would be that we look for a way to replace it with, if it does in fact need to come down, more trees and closer to or more in the central part of the property, so that we achieve some of those ecological functions. I don't, Dave and Patty, I'm sure you guys have some comments to that. I know you disagree with that, but that's sort of what I saw there.
Okay, great. Kyle?
Yeah, I know we kind of discussed, the arborist is obviously being hired by Dave and Patty, which is rightfully so. That's what they should do. But we're not that we're questioning about the best interest of the conservation. If we could get a third set of eyes on that, that's a third party that is neither for us or for Dave and Patty. Because I agree with Chase. Looking at the tree itself, I don't see signs of distress. I do see that there's that split up near the top, but I think you and I talked about this, Sarah, where maybe we take that limb, that portion of the trunk comes down, that is leaning, the only part of the tree that appears to be anywhere near leaning towards the house or deck and patio areas. The rest of the tree has been chasing the sun out towards the lake. And I'm not saying I want to see this thing fall down over your yard, over your beach area, of course. It just didn't seem like it was in distress or imminently going to happen.
Right. And I think for what we've seen, at least in my history on the commission, is that we've had some trees that have, what we thought were ready to go, have then outlasted many of us on the commission, whether it's been 20, 30 years. I do like the opportunity of having a third party, someone that's neutral, to come in and work on behalf of Dave and Patty to look and see that this is the best interest. We have on many times asked them to come in and sculpt out some of the tree to make it healthier and take some of that weight off the top as well. I think the value of that tree really outweighs taking it down right now. We do have a nice liaison, former associate member here, Matt Cahill, who's doing a lot in the town with trees and shade committees. That might be someone to look out to as well. But Kyle, I do like the thought of a third party kind of neutral review for that. Are there other commissioners that have questions or comments on this? I know many have been out on the site over time.
I agree, Sarah. Matt, I think Matt could be unbiased. I think Matt would give an unbiased opinion, to be honest with you. He knows quite a bit about tree health, that's for sure. That's just my 2 cents.
Well, I don't want to, I'm just using that as an example. I don't know if he's available. I don't know what that is, but to certainly have perhaps Amy and Tim work with the bars to find a third party arborist that either municipalities or someone else has used and feel comfortable with as well. But I feel like we have to be diligent on this. Any other commissioners? Yeah.
I really like that idea, Sarah. And I guess I want to expand on it just a second for Dave and Patty, why I think that's a good idea. We want to apply, I think, a very strict amount of scrutiny or a high amount of scrutiny, not just to you guys, but to anyone who wants to take down a tree that close to a resource area and so on. And I think really do our due diligence. The smaller oak, I think we can all look at that and see the potential hazards there. Given that it's less obvious the hazards with this one, it's important both in the context of this singular property and project, but also in the context of just making sure that we're being consistent in doing our due diligence at other sites where, what we don't want to do is introduce the ability for people to just say, well, we've decided that that's hazardous and we disagree. And then the tree has to come down because it's been arbitrarily defined as hazardous. And I'm not saying that you have here, we just don't want to go down the path of opening that door. And to the extent that an independent evaluation looks at it and also determines it's hazardous, then I think we can go down the path of taking it down. But I do really like the idea of dotting our I's and crossing our T's here.
Can I speak to that?
Let me just ask, any other commissioners have any other comments or questions first?
It feels like Kyle may have come up with a reasonable compromise position. Because if I remember the pictures correctly from when they were shown, that split up at the fork was the big concern, and you tried to have it saved, and the arborist basically said, realistically, cabling it or whatever isn't going to do any good. But if you cut that off, safely, of course, does that address the concern and make the tree a little healthier?
I think that's a great point. And I think that one of those leaders that is a heavy weight branch comes off that fork. So us not being arborists, I think that's why we're most keen on, or I'm most keen on just having someone else look at it. This is obviously not our forte. So yes, if you would like to go ahead and speak to that, I will have to say that we have a very full agenda. So carry on if you comments, please.
So in the first place, I'm not sure why the arborist is being characterized as our arborist. That he's we brought him in to be able to take the tree down. As I've explained to you a number of times, we brought the arborist in who is, he has been for decades the tree warden in Acton. So he's a very experienced tree warden, arborist. We brought him in with the explicit purpose of preserving the tree. We wanted to figure out how to put the wall around it in such a way, far enough away, low enough, so that the tree would be, we'd be able to keep it because we love the tree, we like it there. And he told us that there were two parts about the tree that were unsafe. One was the split up where the main fork is above the major trunk, which he said would be difficult to cable and hold together. But the other is the fact that down at the bottom of the tree, it's got a hollow hole, and if you probe it, the probe will go in halfway through the diameter of the tree. And to me, that's a bigger issue. If the base of the tree is half rotten, then it seems like no matter what you do up on top, the tree is not going to be safe. Like I said, we brought him in to try to save the tree, and he told us it should not, that it was hazardous. We brought in a tree company to tell us, how could we save it? How could we cable it in such a way that it would would work? And he also said that cabling it would not be very effective. And he reiterated that even more so that the base of the tree was at risk, and that was a major danger. Like I said, we would like to keep the tree we're just, we would hate to see, yeah, there's the chance for property damage. I'm more concerned about people being around the tree, down at the beach, in the yard, in the house, and somebody getting hurt or worse if the tree were to come down.
Okay. Thank you, commissioners. Questions or comments?
One other thing.
Sure.
I pointed out, I'm not sure whether everybody that was here today heard it, in terms of the shading value of the tree in the lake. The tree is north of the water, and so most of the day, the shade from the tree falls on the house, which is great for us. It doesn't do anything for the lake. By the time it gets into mid to late afternoon, the sun is in a position where it could be casting a shadow on the lake. But at that point, the cove of trees there next to it, all 10 of the oak trees that are the same height, are casting shadow on the beach, on the lake there. So there's a little bit of extra shade that it provides late in the day, but not much, and only for only at the time of day when really the sun's not shining on the lake.
Okay, thank you. And we did discuss today the temperatures of the water and the habitat, that in the middle of the day, fish are typically not in the middle of the lake or on the shoreline. So
Sarah, I do want to respond to that. I respectfully disagree with the characterization. I think if you stand there, you can understand the shade value of that tree is more substantial than just a little bit for a few hours in the day. And I just want to make sure it's clear that that's
I'm going to, with all due regard for everyone, so we're going to move this discussion on because it is already 8:10 and our first hearing is at 7:45 and we have not finished half of our discussions yet. So what I'm hearing here is that I believe the commissioners are asking for a third-party review. If that's something that you're willing to do, that would be wonderful. If not, we can guide you on where the decisions would be from the commission. I think what you're hearing is that the first tree you can go ahead and remove, but we welcome your comments because I think to listen to what you've heard tonight, you've got two options.
So you're asking for a third person to come and look at the tree?
Which is typical of what we do. In fact, later on in the agenda, we have a project in front of us where the project proponent is hiring a third-party review.
This is very common.
Yeah, so I'm saying we've already had two, and you're asking for a third one to come.
I'm not sure I count two here.
So we had the arborist that came in the first place, and we had a tree company come to tell us how we could cable it so that it would be secure, and they said it's not going to be very effective, and they pointed out that the base was rotten again. So yes, you're asking for a third.
With all due respect, a tree company who makes their money taking down trees is a questionable source of information there at best. Yeah. And on top of that, it is your external consultants or project proponents. What we are asking for is someone working on behalf of the town to independently evaluate it.
Okay. Yeah, I understand. I was just clarifying.
Yeah, what I've been hearing is these gentlemen looked at it and then have said, yes, I need more. I think personally, I need more proof than somebody sticking a piece of rebar that goes in a foot or something like that. Again, I'm not an arborist, like none of us are. That's a big disclaimer, but I feel like when these trees are evaluated, I hear a lot more, not destructive. Well, I guess it is destructive testing, but something where it's quantitative, not just poking at a hole, where you can visibly show me that this doesn't, if this is the bottom foot of the tree, then is the tree really a hazard? I need more than somebody just saying something. I think I need them to tell me, show me why. And I get it. They're professionals. I should be able to take their word for it. That's what they're paid to do. But again, that goes back to what Chase just said. They're tree companies, especially paid to take trees down. He's going to tell you, yeah, I think this tree should come down because.
But that's not who we had come. We had a tree warden, an arborist come first.
Right. So that was your.
And then we tried to get the tree company to help us to cable it. Okay. It wasn't that we had the tree company come to take it out. We wanted it cabled.
And we brought in the arborist to tell us how to save the tree, not to remove it.
And they couldn't come up with any option. I get that the cabling doesn't work, and I'm fine with the cabling not working, but.
It's because the branches become too thin at the top of the angle at which they have to cable it from, that it won't hold.
Correct, but we, in due regard, worked with other trees before that they have lessened the weight on certain sides, which has created more of a stable trunk. So we are going to come back to, so let's start back at square. What would you like to do? Because we need to move on.
Yeah, we'll bring somebody else in.
Okay, so I would ask you that I will have Amy Green will contact you to go through the motions of what that looks like to find a neutral third party. But in the meantime, I believe the commissioners, what you're hearing is that the tree as you first approach on the right in the grove is suitable for removal. Is that correct, commissioners?
I would agree with that. Yes.
Okay.
With the one qualifier that I do think once we resolve the other tree, we'll want to talk about the replacement, but I'm not worried about that at the moment. We'll sort that out.
Yep. So we will go through, the caveat to that is that we will go through what the replacement will be and the location will be of that. The location, what we heard today, is not going to be in the grove. It's going to be more to the left of the tree, of the second tree in question. Okay. We have to move on. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Next, so we're going to go ahead and open, it is now 8:15. We're going to open the 745, which is a continued public hearing notice of intent, 18 Ivy Road, Mass DEP 204-0986, replacement of a failed septic system. Who's here to speak to that, please?
I am here tonight, Sarah.
Okay, great.
Good evening. My name is Dan Wolf. I'm with David Ross Associates. And as you mentioned, this is a continued hearing. At our last meeting, we had a discussion in regard to the holding tank that's being placed at the property at 18 Ivy Road. The crux of the matter that has been debated is due to the shallow groundwater table in this area. When we go to dig the excavation to place this tank in the ground, we're going to need to dewater that hole. And the question becomes, where is that water going to go? There were a few outstanding questions I just want to address that came up at the last meeting. The commission had asked where the existing leaching area is. And I had said I was not sure because I had been told a couple of locations were probable. I have since talked to the owner and have determined that the existing system, whatever it may be, whatever shape it may be, is somewhere in the area of the holding tank itself. It's in front of that shed that's shown on the
Dan,
plan.
can you do a screen share with that plan, please?
Yep. Give me 1 second.
Or Kyle?
I got it up
Kyle,
on.
Tim.
I don't have that one ready, sir.
Yeah, no, I was looking at Tim and said Kyle. But yeah, and then if we can show that proximity to Ivy Road, that's great. Okay,
Great.
Sorry, go ahead, Dan.
Again, this plan had been prepared quite some time ago, and we went through a process with the Board of Health, and I had even forgotten that we did actually highlight where that rough leaching area is. There's a cloud basically where the holding tank is going, and it's labeled existing SAS. It stands for soil absorption system. So there is something there. We just don't know what it is. What is customarily done at the beginning of a project like this is if it is a void space, like a pit or an old cesspool, that is typically pumped out pumped dry, and then it is pulled out of there during this excavation process. So anyway, that's the answer to one question. The other question that the commission had sent me off to get some answers for was, what would it take cost-wise to be able to pump any of the groundwater in the excavation into a truck and haul it away? I asked the question and I put the response in my notes here in quotes, only because the contractor I spoke with was quite shocked that that was being asked. He first said that's an extraordinary cost. And he then told me that just the truck alone to be there for the day is a $2,000 cost. And then he said the disposal of any water that's pulled out of there and into this 9,000 gallon tank would be a cost of 25 cents per gallon. At a rate of 9,000 gallons is again over $2,000 alone. So we're in the 4,000, reaching toward $5,000 just for that amenity alone. The next thing I wanted to update the commission on is Amy, and bless her heart for doing this. She reached out actually during our last meeting, and then the following day, I think she reached out again to a few other sources. One of them was Shauna Little from the EPA, who states that the catch basin owner would need to give permission if we were to take the proposal that I have here on the plan, and that is to pump into the existing catch basin with the proper siltation devices and filtering system around the catch basin. Being that that catch basin is in Ivy Road, what she was referring to is that the town would need to give permission. And that is what led me to have a meeting with Steve Youngley, the DPW director. And after our conversation and after an earlier email conversation with Amy, he then summarized his findings in an email to the commission, or I should say back to Amy, stating that we had talked about it. I had showed him the details of the plan, and he is acceptable to addressing the dewatering process through the catch basin with the amenities that I had shown on the plan. So that is in an email in writing to Amy and therefore the commission. So again, I'm back to the point that I had come with 2 weeks ago, and that is, I feel that this is probably still the best and quickest solution. And the idea of getting that older system out of the groundwater table with a completely secured holding tank is an overall benefit to the neighborhood. So if I can answer any questions, I'd be happy to.
Great, thank you for that, Dan. Commissioners, questions?
Yes.
Dan, when you met with the town, was it clear that the area that you're dewatering is the location of the former soil absorption system?
I do not recall whether that came up in the conversation, but I anticipated that question tonight. And all I can say is we're trying to make the best of what is really a bad situation here. If we delay this any further, you continue to have sewage in the groundwater table contributing to pollution to the same sources that this catch basin is going to.
I'm going to say unequivocally and just once and be done. I will not approve a project here that involves dewatering septic fluids through only a filter system that's ultimately going to end up in Long Lake. That's just a recipe for dispersing essentially septic material out there. If the cost to mitigate that is $4,000 in offsite disposal and a vac truck, so be it. But I won't support this project this way.
Yeah, I didn't realize that we were dealing with the SAS. I thought when we talked at our last meeting that that tank, the existing septic tank, discharged under Ivy Road or something up there. Isn't that what was said? You would go look at it. So
that is what I had reported, yes, from a conversation that happened back in November of 22. All I can say is that's what I recalled was the initial conversation, and I had since been corrected.
Yeah, and that's
I also want to state, I respect your opinion and your vote certainly counts one way or another, but the liquid portion of whatever is in that leaching area is being pumped out prior to construction and prior to pumping.
Dan, I think it would be helpful, and I don't know if there is a graph that shows this, is where the flow after the initial first catch basin, where it travels from there to the actual outfall.
Yes, I had described that at our first meeting, and I may have the road name wrong. Maybe you folks know where it is. Is it Lake Road that Ivy intersects with?
Tim, are you able to bring up locus with that, or Dan,
yeah.
if you have that?
Was that in the initial filing, the notice itself?
I don't think it was.
There is a locus map on the plan, but there's so many roads in there that I cannot see what the road name is. But anyway, I do know that the commission is familiar with a new construction project down at the corner of Ivy Road and this.
I think it is Lake Drive.
It's Lake Drive. Yeah, it's Lake Drive.
All right. So in this picture you see right here, I'm showing the hay bales or silt fence around a catch basin. That then heads to the southeast down Ivy Road to another catch basin with a sump in it at the intersection of Ivy Road and Lake Road. The drainage pipe then goes from there in a southwesterly direction to the corner of Lake Road and Juniper Road. It is at that point that it meets up with the intermittent stream that goes behind our house and heads across the street into the detention basin.
I guess the question I have, and I respect Steve Yonley immensely, but I don't know who has the ability to speak on behalf of the town from a liability standpoint of verifying through water department or whomever higher beings can say, yes, we're good to go ahead and do that. I guess that's my comfort level on this discharge.
So we had agreed that Steve, the MS4 consultant, kind of had final say on that, but that was before we knew we would be pumping water out of the SAS. We had given
excuse me, just for clarification, the water being pumped out of the SAS is going into a pump truck. That is being taken out on step one. Now we're digging a hole, yes, in the same area, but what we're taking out is the gravel material that is there, as well as the continued infiltration of groundwater.
Right, that's going to carry whatever was in this SAS area with it into your excavation.
And I just can't understand why the commission isn't thrilled to get this system out of the ground and done with.
I am absolutely thrilled to get it out of the ground. I'm not thrilled to have the potential of septic water being pumped directly into Long Lake.
I'll approve this tonight without any more discussion if the agreement is that it's going to be taken offsite for disposal. I agree with you. This is important to do, but we're not going to risk spreading E. coli containing water elsewhere, or I'm not anyway.
Okay. So if we can, let's just take a moment. Any other commissioners would like to voice some thoughts or comments or concerns on this?
What's the elevation of the groundwater when you dig that hole? Is water gonna seep into that hole?
Dan, if you could reiterate that again, we went over that at the last meeting,
Yes.
it was water is close by.
Tim, it's right there on your screenshot. You want to zoom in on the right side of text right there.
Soil modeling, which represents where groundwater is at its highest point, it was at 16 inches. On the day of our testing, we had groundwater at 41 inches. So the design is based on groundwater being at 16 inches. Here we are in the month of March, and yes, it's been a very wet summer, but I wouldn't think it would be quite at 16 inches, but we might as well assume worst case.
So Carl, they're hoping to do a one and go, that during the same day, they're going to excavate and put the tight tank in. Correct, Dan?
Correct.
Yeah, the only reason I asked that is look at I believe it's the neighbor's house that also had excavation going on, and there was so much water on that property that
You're talking about Zero Ivy, right?
that there was so much water on that property that it immediately like raised my antennas as to how this property was going to make out.
So you're gonna take out the contaminated water first, and then you're gonna have to dredge out in order to get the tank in there. And the reason you need to pump water is because the tank will float if you don't, right?
That's correct.
So at the point that you're doing that, is there no possibility of I'm gonna sound stupid and I apologize, but a barrier, putting some kind of barrier, you know, when they dig into the road and they have the big metal thing that the backhoe puts down as they're digging in order to have the
Put a
ground
trench,
not fall apart?
trench box. You're
Trench
talking
box,
about trench
yeah.
box. They're not watertight.
Can that be accomplished? I know they're not watertight, but the water's already in the ground. It's already contaminating the ground. So putting it into the catch basin, and by the way, there are 3 catch basins. If they were to filter the 3 of them, what the first one misses, the second one will catch. What the second one misses, the third will catch, right? Because I thought I heard 3 catch basins.
No, the filtering is for any silt, sands, debris like that. The silt sack in the first one is to catch that. You've still got the water entering into the whole
Still have the
system.
contaminated water.
So there's no means to filter the water.
And thank you for bringing up the trench box idea. That was again presented at our first meeting. That I've already consulted with a excavation specialist in terms of what is the best thing to do to slow down the infiltration of groundwater into our hole. And he had suggested a trench box. The trench box, I got a quote on that of $3,500 to place that trench box in there to facilitate the exercises during that day. So that, along with the over $4,000 for the pump truck, we are escalating costs for what is normally a very quick one-day job.
Yes, Dan, but with due regard, it's not as close to the wetlands and having high water mark. So the average person is not looking at a site that is so unstable at the moment. So other commissioners, questions or comments, guidance?
This may sound equally naive as the last time, but could the tank be placed partially filled so that it doesn't float, and have whatever material is going to be placed around it put in afterwards, and then pump out what was in the tank?
I appreciate your question, but the issue is not flotation. The issue is being able to excavate down to the proper depth and to prepare the base of the excavation for the placement of the tank. The tank itself does have enough weight, as proven by the buoyancy calculations at the top of the plan. The tank has enough weight to offset the buoyancy forces of the groundwater.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that.
I think, Dan, you can understand how important this system is and this filing is. We've had some really good dialogue. This is not average dialogue for us, and I appreciate the commissioners really, no pun intended, trying to think outside the box of how we can do this, and it is unique. So I appreciate your patience kind of going through this process, because we, like you, want to make it work, but we do have guidelines that we do need to follow as well. So I welcome any other comments from any other commissioners or questions for Dan.
Sarah, if I may just jump in here once again.
Sure. Thank
I clearly understand. I'm forgetting the gentleman's name that was not going to vote for this. I don't see him on my screen all of a sudden. Chase, thank you. I certainly heard Chase's adamance about not voting in favor, but yet I still don't have a feeling for the other members. If the other members want to see this get done in its current format, I'd be curious. However, we need to move this along. If Chase and others carry the vote, then I guess we're resigned to paying for the water to be removed.
Okay.
But I'm just curious whether there is a hope to move forward with the plan as presented or not.
So Dan, are you asking for an informal straw poll so we don't tie our hands with a formal vote?
Thanks for stating that, Chase. Yes, it is unorthodox, but it has been done before. Is that what you're asking?
Yes.
Okay. So what we will do, and Andrew, if you'd like to do a roll call through this, mind you, it is not binding. This is just a unorthodox kind of straw poll. So Chase, we understand your thoughts going forward. Andrew, if you want to ask.
Certainly. All right, so we'll do a straw poll vote. Chase?
I would be opposed to it as it's currently proposed.
Kyle?
I'm also opposed as it's currently being presented.
Sarah?
I'm opposed, but hopeful that we can go ahead and do the pump truck or trench box.
Carl?
Opposed as presented.
And Michael?
I am opposed as well.
Okay.
So with that, I have a clear understanding. And again, I hope you understand that I'm trying to represent my client as best as possible to keep costs down. I hear what you're saying. I understand the importance of it. For the sake of moving this along, could the formal vote take place in which a condition on the order of condition is that the pump truck is brought in? In other words, I don't have that in my narrative notes at the top of the plan, but to keep us from having to revise the plan only to come back again to have you vote loses another 2 weeks.
Dan, I would offer to you that we would probably want to make it even a touch more general than that. And that is simply that the condition would be that the water is not discharged to the catch basin.
Yep.
And then to the extent that you and your contractor can come up with a better solution that meets that condition, I think I would be open to that. It's not my goal to cost people money here when they're trying to do the right thing.
Okay, fair enough, Chase. Thank you very much.
Yep, you nailed it, Chase.
So commissioners, to be clear, what is proposed is, as Dan had stated, and we can work through the order of conditions and such. So recognizing that he would still have to present a updated plan and narrative that would involve a non-discharge off property. And we could just hold the order of conditions for that if you wish to have us take a vote tonight. Dan, is that what you would like for us to do?
Yes, that would be great.
Okay. Commissioners, are we okay with that amendment or modification?
Yes.
Okay. I'm seeing nodding of heads. We're on Zoom where some people can't see that. Let's go ahead. Would someone like to make a motion for this? Notice of intent for 18 Ivy Road.
Sure. I'll move to close the public hearing and issue an order of conditions that includes the requirement that there is to be no disposal of dewatering fluids to the catch basin for 18 Ivy Road, Mass DEP file number 2040986.
Can we just, Chase, so not to put words in your mouth, can we say off-site or off-property? Because I don't want it to go into the resource area either.
Oh, sure. I mean, I think that's implicit, but right.
I hope so, but
Yes, consider my motion amended to include no offsite disposal of that water.
Okay. Do we have a second to that motion?
Yeah, I'll second that.
Thank you, Kyle.
All right, roll call vote. Carl,
Tom Melberg, aye.
Kyle,
Kyle Maxfield, aye.
Chase,
Chase Gervig, aye.
Michael,
Michael Livingston, aye.
Sarah,
Sarah Seward, aye.
myself, I. It's unanimous.
Okay. Thank you, Dan. Good luck.
Great. Thank you very much. Appreciate your
Amy-
patience. It's,
Yep, Amy, we'll be
certainly
back in
unique.
touch. Obviously, let us know time frame as well. Okay.
Yes.
To the project. Okay. It's now 8:37. We're opening the 7:50 continued public hearing, abbreviated notice of resource area delineation, 95 Taylor Street, Mass DEP 204-0987. Is anyone here to speak with that?
It doesn't look like we have anybody here to speak to that. I will say that Brian Butler.
Yep. So go ahead, Tim.
Yep, he did get the proposal sent over to Amy, I believe, today. And I believe Amy sent out an email shortly ago saying that Mark Gallagher agreed to the cost. She just wanted to know at the time if, because she didn't expect that to get sent in before the meeting, whether or not she'd have to come back to you guys to approve the cost, or if she can just sign off on it. But
So I think also one thing to note is that Seal Harbor is accepting of the scope and the cost. And so that's good news. And I think what Amy's looking for is us to be able to give Amy the go ahead to say, yes, Mark, that's great. And just keep the ball running, that she doesn't have to come back again. And so I would be in favor of that. I don't think it requires a vote. It's just an acknowledgement of a procedure. Correct, Tim?
yes.
Okay, great. Are we all in favor of that? I think we want to keep this moving, and I think Oxbow would do a great job. Okay, great. So I would like to go ahead and open the 7:55 continued public hearing, abbreviated notice of intent, 5 Kaliva Road, Mass DEP 204-0984. Susan, I saw that you were on earlier. Susan, are you here to speak to 5 Kaliva?
Hi, I am. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Thank you for joining us. If you would like to introduce yourself to the commission, we have a new commissioner and some new people joining us, and let us know any updates that you might have. Thank you.
Absolutely. I'd like you to add my father, Ed Ladley, into the conversation as well.
Yes, he's there and currently able to speak.
Excellent. So in the previous meeting, we had agreed to, I agreed to hire an engineer to work with our deck situation. The proposal I got from them exceeded $15,000, and that's not really a viable path for me at all. So I'd like to try to work with you and you know, kind of hope you'll work with me on.
Susan, just so
how
you
we
know,
can
your
put this through.
audio, Susan, your audio kind of blanked out there for a second. So
Yeah, it's windy here. I'm so sorry. I have
no worries. So
unstable condition.
Yep, what we captured was that you had received a quote from an engineer for $15,000 and thought that that wasn't viable.
I don't know. I don't know what's going on.
The wind's blowing there. They keep
The wind has and we have the rain here. Tim, do you have a plan
Yes, I do.
you can call up? So Susan, we're going to ask Tim to call up a plan that while we're on Zoom, we can reference this. There you go. So Susan, if you can hear us, go ahead and carry on with your discussion.
So what I'd like to try to do, if this will work for you, is to have the wetland specialist come and mark the high water mark the wetlands, and then have my contractor do the rest. Amy said she would have to be out to verify anyway, when they measured. And I'm hoping to, I'd like to stay within the 50 feet setback, of course. And if the deck is built to code, I'm wondering if you would find that acceptable.
Good.
So you're wishing to stay outside of the 50 feet as
Correct.
correction. Okay, I believe you said within. So most concerning to us is the post 50. So more leniency from the 50 to 100. Commissioners, how do we feel about that? Many of us have been out on site. What I heard you say, Susan, was that a wetlands specialist would come in and flag, and then the commissioners would go in, or Amy would go in to verify that. And then those flags basically are plotted, and then your contractor can do kind of what we would call as an as-built, where those flags are to the proximity of the deck that you have currently almost constructed.
Correct.
Okay, commissioners, thoughts on that?
I would support that, Sarah. I think that's reasonable.
Okay. Kyle, I know you've been out on site too, and I think Andrew, you've been out.
Yeah, there was a deck out there previously, correct? On the backside of this?
Yes, yeah, that we, there was an original deck there that went out further than this deck that we're proposing.
Okay, so for us, it's better than in kind. We're not even replacing in kind. We're replacing less than in kind. Is that
correct?
Yeah, I would support that. Assuming it is, outside of 50. If we can hopefully keep it outside the 50, that'd be great.
So just for the commissioners that have not been there, the present deck that is partially constructed is within the 50 at points within 26 feet. So
that's within 26 feet of an area that you called a wetland. That is actually not a wetland. It does not stay wet. It dries out in between rains, and then it gets absorbed back into the world or whatever. So that center section by the pond is not a wetland. That is, when it's not raining, that is dry land.
So that would be great to have your wetlands
and
specialist.
it has, there is a
hire
wetland.
them. That's kind
There's
of
a wetland to the left. I'm sorry, Sarah, go ahead.
No, so that's why it's good to hear that you're hiring a specialist that does that, a wetland scientist. They also look at the soils as well. So follow that course, and then once the flags are there, that person, whomever you hire, that is a specialist, will also take some soil samples and log it, so that way that becomes part of the record. They just don't go in and just kind of look around. They also do some soil samples. They'll get plotted, and then the Conservation Commission will go out and hopefully agree or have discussion if something needs to be moved. It's very common to have that as a fluid discussion. Commissioners, comments?
Yeah, I hope she's right.
I agree.
Sounds like a plan.
I mean, that cost to me for just the wetland specialist is $750. If, I would strongly hope that you would work with me if, as long as I'm outside of the 50, that for the deck.
So I think what's important is to recognize what wetlands are and also the resource areas as well. If there's a commissioner that might want to just kind of talk through this a little bit, that might be helpful as well.
Yeah, Susan, based on what I heard, I want to make sure we ground expectations here. Because a wetland isn't just an area that stays permanently inundated with water. Essentially, a wetland is an area where the water is close to the ground surface. And so they often, you can have, in fact, many wetlands, most potentially even, are dry more than they're wet in terms of standing water in them. And so I want to make sure you understand that when the wetland scientist comes out, she's going to look at not just where is there water, but where is there soil evidence of the location of a wetland, and where is there vegetation evidence of the location of a wetland, because some plants grow in wetlands and some don't. And our jurisdictional area begins at the technical definition of where that wetland is, not where there is perennial standing water. Does that match sort of what you're expecting?
No, but that's okay, because I did not know that definition. I appreciate that.
Can I say something?
Absolutely. If you could introduce
okay.
yourself too, please.
I'm Ed Ladley, and I own Camp 1. I've been going there for 63 years with my wife, and I'm pretty familiar with the property. And I think she's absolutely right, but I'm certainly willing to have an expert tell us one way or the other. And I think that's a great solution for the problem that shouldn't even be a problem in my estimation. But I know you guys got to do your job, and I just want I want this to work out for everybody. So if you're good with the person to come out and flag it and check the soil and all that stuff, if that's all good and she stays within 50 feet back, I think it's wonderful.
Just one word of caution: the professional wetland scientists that do this have specific credentials. If you need Amy or Tim to verify that who you're lining up has the right credentials to do this, certainly don't hesitate to reach out. I just want to make sure we're all, we're getting the right information the right way.
Sure,
Thank you,
that's fair
Chase.
enough.
If you want to give me a name of someone you'd prefer me to use, I mean, I don't think I'm getting any bargain with the company I went with.
No, I appreciate that. We actually like to not give names just because there are a lot of professionals out there, and we don't want to establish some sort of expectation or bias or something like that as a public board.
I understand that.
If you can send me a list of 6 names.
I bet Amy and Tim could help you in that regard. Yeah, with a handful to
Susan,
look at.
if you have someone in mind, just email them that person's name and their credentials, and I'm sure if it's someone local, we
I have to reach out to the. I'll have to reach out to the engineering company and see if I can portion off that portion of the bill for them to do.
Yep. Okay. So
and then,
if it makes you feel any better, Susan, that price you got is within ballpark of probably anybody that you'd choose.
That's probably right.
That's not including the work or the materials or anything. That is just the plan.
No, I'm talking about the wetland scientist.
Okay.
That range that you told me is probably fairly accurate.
And that's fine. I'm willing to go there. The other question I have is about the new shed and its proximity to the wetland behind Camp 6. We measured it at 71 feet, so it's definitely greater than 50. It's definitely less than 100. Will you accept that position for that new shed?
Kyle, what's your thoughts on that? Kyle, I know you've been out on site. Andrew, I think you've been out on site as well. I've been out.
Yeah, I think the last time we talked about that, as far as our concern was that it just needed to really be cleaned up in there. There's a lot of debris and waste. And then we weren't totally sure if it had a building permit or required a building permit. I don't remember which of those statements is correct, but those were the two major concerns.
And I do think that when your wetland scientist is there, it would not be a hardship to have them just jump behind that shed and flag those wetlands there.
Yes.
I think that we would look more favorably on that. And as Kyle said, you just have bits of everything there that needs to be stabilized. It needs to be vegetated. So the thought is, as that kind of rubble just stays there, it doesn't allow for healthy vegetation to go through. So we typically ask for that to be removed and get the land stabilized. So you're having plants and vegetation grow. So when it rains, it just doesn't flush all over the area.
Yeah, that's certainly fair enough.
Okay, so I think with that understanding, I think Susan, the commission would look favorably on the shed, staying with that type of information to know its proximity to the resource area and how you could clean it up. So basically removing the rubble and then kind of regrading, adding some loam, adding some plantings. You've got a beautiful mulberry tree there, might help
I'm
to.
super happy to do plantings. Like nothing makes me happier than to put plants in the ground.
Okay, great. So I think
all of
what's
that
best to
rubble
do
was disrupted.
Yep. So I think what would be best to do is to carry forward with whomever you're hiring as a wetland specialist, speak to the conservation office and Amy and ask, and just keep us apprised of their time frame so we know when to put you back on for another hearing.
Okay, that sounds great.
Super. Commissioners have any other questions?
No, I thank you very much. I think it'll work out for all of us.
Okay, great. So Susan, hopefully we'll hear from you in a couple weeks.
Yeah, that would be amazing. That'd be lovely.
Okay, thank you. Have a nice evening.
Okay, thank
Okay,
you.
thanks. You guys too.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Okay, commissioners, we're going to go back to administrative discussions. We're picking back up on web page review. And Tim, that's going to be your conversation, I think. It was circulated around proposed text and what's online, some old text. I did see where in the proposed text, it is current online that lists all the commissioners, but in that proposed text, I couldn't get it to scroll down. So I couldn't see Kyle's name or Carl's name. So Ed, once you're sworn in, that'll get added in as well. Does anyone have any questions or, comments or vibes on the proposed text? If you haven't had a chance to look at it, I know everybody's been busy with a lot of these emails. If you could make any comments, but to kind of read through for them, that would be great. Any comments?
Are you talking about the section that says members? You couldn't get the entire list to show up?
So the one that said proposed text that came by email, as I read through that, it came to the bottom and stopped after 4 names. So I didn't see I could not scroll down low enough to see Kyle or Carl. But that's proposed, Ed. That's not what's on the website currently.
Right.
Okay.
If you go on the website right now and scroll down, it does show everybody.
So it's current, but going forward to the new text, it just needs to make sure everybody's included.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, but if anybody has any feedback, I know the office would love to hear from that. Tim, do you have an update on Cloverdale invasive plant management plan?
Yes. So basically this is going to be an NOI, right? And we need to understand figure out how we're going to deal with the abutters, if we want to meet with them before, or if we want to just deal with them as we're going through the NOI process.
Yeah, okay, so let's stop there and talk about it. What would the commissioners like to do? Do we want to just go ahead and have one discussion?
Yeah, I mean, from what I've heard with the abutters, what is trying to sit and talk with them, are we going to gain any value in that? It doesn't sound like we would. And I'm not saying we should try to blindside. They already know that we want to do this or that we should be doing it. I'm not sure going out of our way for another discussion with them is going to be fruitful. I would hope it would be, but past experience says it's not going to be.
And frankly, as a matter of sort of completing the file, it would just be redundant in the sense that if we don't have an NOI file, they may have comments, but they're comments about a project that doesn't exist at that time. So in order to better reflect those in the file, they would have to then remake those comments. And that seems like not a good use of anyone's time, whether they're opposed or in favor of the project.
Exactly. I completely agree.
So that sounds like a clean path. Tim, do all the commissioners agree with that? So better to develop the NOI, present it, offer discussion, comments, and then can always amend it.
I gotcha.
One qualifier I would put to that, though, is that we should make sure, because we understand that there will be a certain amount of opposition to this, to make sure that we're really doubling down on the communication and inviting those contrary comments, and
sure.
And that's perfectly reasonable for us to do in the context of a proposed project.
Okay, great.
And along with that, we don't have the areas mapped yet. We've got the estimated cost is going to be somewhere around $2,500. That's kind of based off of the Browns Woods treatment, which we got the first year covered on that one, the Browns Woods, by a SISMA grant. we don't have any grants yet. But I am going to be looking into some to see if we can find some to at least cover part of that if we can.
So we would be filing the NOI and not yet entirely sure how we're going to pay for it.
Well, I'm going to look into the grants before that.
Yeah,
to see
so
if
let's,
that's an
I would
option.
say let's carry the conversation over to another meeting, Tim, after you have more guidance, because that could certainly sway the timeline on this. If we don't have the grant and the opportunity for funds for that, that might be, okay. All right,
But
Yeah,
so
I'm
we
gonna
would
look into
have
that this week.
we would have multiple years to fulfill the order of conditions and complete the project. I guess I wouldn't be that worried if we didn't know where the money was coming from yet.
right, you'd have 3, then 1 or 2 after. Yep, okay. Okay, let's move on to Lakeshore compliance guidance discussion.
So, Michael, I know you had some comments on this that you passed around. If you'd like to comment on them.
So are you referring to enhancements
Let me
for
see.
beach, or what are you looking for from us at the moment?
I'm looking in terms of the docks.
Oh, docs. Okay, so chapter. Okay. It's been a while since we've discussed this. Do we want to discuss this now, or do we want to wait and be refreshed with the information that was sent out 2 months ago?
Let's review the material and perhaps table it for tonight.
Okay, Tim, is that okay?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. I think it's healthy to have that in front of us. Okay, so we had one of my updates was the sewer update. Just make sure everybody's read that email with Nick Lawler. It sounds like they're really trying to fly through that. And I don't think we had any other additions to administrative discussions.
Sorry, I thought of one other one we were talking, and Tim, you might be able to answer this. I think it is 67 Foster Street. It was a septic replacement, but it was right in the crux of the wetlands. They a new owner's failed septic wants, well, they are replacing it. I guess they broke ground. I was just hoping that you or Amy had stopped out before they did.
Amy did. I did not.
Okay,
Yep,
as long
but
as
she
you know
did.
that Amy did, great.
Yes.
It is a small, there is a lot of equipment over there and a very, very small lot. And I know we had Carl, especially, I remember having concerns with being, I mean, it's right on top of that resource area. So.
Yep, I didn't get a chance to
67
talk to her.
Foster? What's that next to?
It's at the corner of, I'm at the corner of Mill Road and Foster, so it's right around the corner for me. It's close to, it's where Foster turns into Tahadawan, but Foster continues up towards the train station.
Okay. That must be very wet right now.
That was the other thing too. Like, I mean, there was a lot of earth that I saw stockpiled from the road, not even out back on the property. So I know they don't have a lot of room to work, but there was at least 4 pieces of equipment working.
Has Amy seen that site?
She went out there, I believe, right after they put the erosion controls in.
That's typical, right? You go out before they break ground after the installation of erosion controls.
Yep. I don't believe she's been out since, but I could be wrong. I haven't heard from her.
Is she in the office tomorrow?
She is, but she's slammed with interviews for the Marin's assistant.
Okay. Can you perhaps, are you in tomorrow?
I am, yeah.
Could you just go drive by and maybe just take some photos so you
Sure.
could share that with her?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, that would be great. All right.
And Sarah,
Yep.
I was wondering, can we make a request or do we have an update on the orchard at all?
I should be able to, at the next, we've only met once with the new leaders and we've done a site walk. So we have a big to-do list, but I will try and do an update at the next meeting. There's a lot of moving parts.
I can, yeah, that's kind of why I wanted to get an idea. Thank you.
I'm happy to do that.
No.
Well, not happy, but I'll do that. So,
Yeah, I get it.
okay.
For whatever it's worth, we're happy that you're doing it.
It is now 9:01. Would anyone like to make a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second,
All right, roll call vote. Chase,
who's Kirby guy?
Kyle,
Kyle Maxfield, aye.
Carl,
Tom Melba guy.
Sarah.
Sarah Seward, aye.
Is Michael still here?
I don't see Michael anymore.
Oh.
He's not.
He was here just a second ago.
Yeah. When
That's
you
right.
mentioned his name about giving an update, I was like, oh, he is not here anymore. I know he's not local either. He could be.
So I'm glad, Ed and Russ, to have you join us. So nice to see everybody. There.